Over the span of human history, there have unfortunately been countless atrocities committed, amongst which genocide can arguably be considered the worst. As such, it may come as a surprise that the act of genocide only became a crime under international law in 1946 under the Genocide Convention via the United Nations General Assembly Resolution 96, and officially becoming a legally binding document under the 1948 Convention. This begs the question, has anything really changed since then? Has outlawing genocide as a crime really had a significant impact on the world? This video will explore the strengths and shortcomings of the Genocide Convention through two case studies, culminating in our respective opinions on whether or not it has truly made an important difference. One of the clearest modern examples of how classifying genocide as a crime does make a difference is the ongoing conflict in the Gaza Strip. Since October 2023, Israel's military operations in Gaza have led to tens of thousands of Palestinian deaths, widespread destruction, and severe humanitarian suffering. In 2024, the United Nations Independent International Commission of Inquiry concluded that the actions of the Israeli government and military met the legal definition of genocide under the 1948 Genocide Convention. The Commission cited evidence of mass civilian killings, deliberate starvation, the targeting of hospitals and sanitization systems, and measures intended to prevent births, all actions prohibited under Article 2 of the Genocide Convention. These findings matter not only for what they reveal, but for how they became possible. Without genocide being a defined national crime, there will be no legal framework for such an investigation, no clear language to describe these acts, and no mechanisms to hold leaders accountable. Because genocide is a crime under international law, South Africa was able to bring a case against Israel before the International Court of Justice, the world's highest legal body. The ICJ accepted the case under the Genocide Convention and, in 2024, issued provisional measures ordering Israel to further prevent genocidal acts, allow humanitarian aid, and preserve evidence. This was historic. For the first time, a current conflict involving a powerful state was formally investigated under the Genocide Convention, an action that would be impossible if genocide were not recognized as a crime. In addition, the International Criminal Court issued an arrest warrant for Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu for alleged war crimes and crimes against humanity. These steps demonstrate that international law gives the world a way to pursue justice even when the accused are heads of state. To reiterate, none of this will exist without genocide being codified as a crime. The legal framework also fuels international awareness and humanitarian response. Because genocide is legally defined, states and organizations are obligated to act, to provide aid, apply sanctions, or call for ceasefires. The Gaza flotillas, for instance, and the surge in global humanitarian support show how naming genocide mobilizes civil society and the international community. Countries such as Ireland, Belgium, and Spain have all formally supported South Africa's case. These interventions are possible because the Genocide Convention binds member states to prevent and punish such crimes. Of course, the system is far from perfect. Enforcement remains limited. The United Nations Security Council, where the United States holds veto power, can and has historically blocked collective actions, such as sanctions, ceasefires, or peacekeeping operations. And even when courts issue rulings, compliance often depends on political will. Yet, even with these flaws, the classification of genocide as a crime still creates pressure, visibility, and legal accountability that would otherwise not exist. The Gaza case shows that the Genocide Convention is not just symbolic, it's functional. It enables legal action, amplifies moral outrage, and offers victims recognition under international law. Even if justice moves slowly, it moves because a crime exists. In this sense, outlawing genocide has absolutely made a difference in the world. It may not yet stop every atrocity, but ensures that none can occur without scrutiny, without record, and without consequence. Naming genocide does not end it, but it begins the fight against silence.
In the western desert of Sudan, life has always been balanced on the edge of survival. Darfur, the land of the Fur people, once thrived through farming, trading, and community ties that stretched across the land. But as decades of drought and neglect deepened poverty, tension brewed between Arabic herders and non-Arabic farmers. By 2003, the tension between the groups was at its peak, beginning the conflict. Two rebel groups rose up, accusing Sudan's government of discrimination. Khartoum answered with fire. Villages were raided by the Janjaweed, Arabic militias backed by the state. The world had already named genocide a crime in 1948, yet in Darfur, it could be said that words never stopped the bullets or the bombs. Innocent people paying the price for the mistakes of their leaders. More than 300,000 people died, along with millions fleeing to camps around the outskirts of the country. On top of this, somewhere around 9,300 men and women were raped during this conflict, although the real numbers are likely much higher. The dead can't speak to the atrocities that happened to them. Who knows what evidence was burned in the piles of bodies set aflame? The ICC indicted President Omar al-Bashir for genocide, the first sitting head of state ever charged in the court's history. But even with the law behind them, justice has yet to be served for the people of Sudan. The Sudanese government blocked investigators. International forces arrived too late, too few, too restricted. And while the world defined definitions and debated legislation, Darfur burned. A terrifying, blinding inferno. What does it mean to declare genocide illegal when no one stops it? The word crime implies punishment, yet the perpetrators remained in power for years. Villages like these, scattered circles of ash, became symbols of the incompetence we have seen in the ICC and ICJ, along with the UN, over the decades that were to come. The children of Sudan were not spared from the conflict, forced to watch their brothers and sisters burn, watching families run in terror from the invading forces. Their art became evidence for trials that still haven't finished. But no court verdict can rebuild a home lost to a fire. The conviction of the men responsible will not bring back the lost innocence of the children torn away from their mothers. In the video clip you're about to watch, you will see the scale of the length of this conflict.
The Republic of the Sudan is the third largest country in Africa. It is situated at the crossroads of sub-Saharan Africa and the Middle East, with fertile lands, abundant livestock, and manufacturing. However, it is also the fifth hungriest nation in the world, according to the Global Hunger Index, with almost one-third of the country living below the international poverty line. For well over a decade in Darfur, a region of western Sudan, hundreds of thousands of civilians have continued to suffer the effects of an ongoing armed conflict, including acts of murder, rape and sexual violence, aerial bombings of civilian areas, and attacks on villages and IDP camps. Hundreds of thousands of civilians are displaced and living in camps in Darfur and neighboring countries. According to international reports, due to the escalation of violence in Darfur in 2014 alone, about 500,000 people were newly displaced.
As seen in the video, refugees line up for food and water in crowded camps that stretch for miles. These aren't historic archives, they're today's images. 2 decades after the first massacres, Darfur's people still live in this hellscape. International law calls genocide a crime, but for many Sudanese, the law arrived like a press release from a faraway nation that never sent help. If justice only exists on paper and on the media, what difference does it make on the ground? If countries won't step in and take action, what's the purpose of naming genocide? To this day, the terror and tragedies of war are still happening in Sudan. My main argument against making genocide a crime having a difference is this. When a crime is named but not stopped, does the label still matter in the end? The word genocide turns suffering into evidence. It forces the world to see what would otherwise be dismissed as chaos or war. When Rwanda was ignored in 1994, it taught leaders a lesson that echoed through Darfur and into Gaza today. In Gaza, as civilians flee bombardment and the world argues over words, that same debate continues. Does calling something a crime save lives or merely describe their loss? For many Palestinian families, the difference isn't about legal matters. It's about survival. International law gives them a language to demand accountability, to record their truth in a world that might otherwise deny it. It brings attention to the genocide, bringing global outrage, along with hope of aid to the people of Gaza. When the world labels these acts as genocide, it creates a moral record that survives longer than any dictator. The trials for Bosnia's leaders and the Holocaust architects did more than punish. They taught the next generation that humanity can prevail over such cruelties. This map doesn't do justice to all the genocides that have occurred in history. However, as we can see, genocide is a problem humanity has not failed to present us with many varying examples. Across time, each case shows that while law alone can't prevent genocide, it keeps memory alive and lays the groundwork for future action. Without these laws, never again would just be a slogan. With them, it becomes a promise we may eventually be able to keep. So yes, calling genocide a crime does make a difference. Not because it stops every bomb or saves every community, but because it tells victims that their lives mattered enough for the world to try, for us to try. Justice may be slow, but it's the only language that turns tragedy into history, and history into responsibility. And remember,